Welcome to another episode of the Harder to Breathe podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dusick. I was the founding drummer of Maroon 5, but I'm now a registered therapist, author, and mental health advocate. With me, as always, is my co-host, Duck Maillard. How you doing, Duck?
I'll be honest with you, I'm tired. I've got some news that I'll share with the group. There's a new young lady in my life, and yeah, it's okay. My wife she's okay with it. We picked her out together. We have a kitten. We have a young. we have an orange kitten, which for those of you in the cat world know is like two kittens.
Really?
Orange kittens are insane.
They have a lot of energy.
They're just they're like the ADD cat of the cat world, like. And this one is no exception. Her name is Maple. After much discussion, there was a lot of debate over the name, but actually a listener of the show, our good friend Cindy. So shout out to Cindy. Thank you so much. She actually happened to post that she had kittens, and we had promised my son for his birthday. Our cat of 18 years passed away last year, and he loves cats. And so immediately it was like, we'll get another cat. Don't worry. For his birthday, we told him we'd get him a cat, but there were no kittens. So we waited a couple of months, and then, like I said, out of the blue, this listener, our wonderful friend Cindy, posted that she had kittens, and I messaged her right away, and we got her last couple weeks ago, and my arms are all cut up from kitten claws, and it's like babysitting a newborn, but it's been very exciting, but I am a little run ragged from the kitten experience.
You weren't anticipating that ginger energy.
Right? And now we have a ginger dog too, so it's like there's just red hair everywhere, so I'm sure my wife feels a little outnumbered, but my son's loving it, and the dog is tolerating it. So,
wow,
yeah.
There's babies in the world.
There's
babies and
yeah.
kittens.
It's true. So, yeah. Other than that, though, things are good. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's getting used to the new year, the new life that I'm living. It's
a new paradigm of Orion.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of cats in my life, and right now I have no cats in my house and no people other than me. It's really yeah. No, I'm enjoying it though. I'm sort of exploring the space of my house is holding space for me.
Playing cowbell everywhere.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I noticed a couple tendencies of mine. I don't mean to skirt right past
No,
your
that
cat.
was it. Was more? Maple's living her life. That's all everyone needs to know.
Well, I can't wait to meet Maple. So let's.
God, it's a trip.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I'm like, I'm noticing some tendencies of mine that are coming out that I have always been there, but maybe you can help me sort of decipher which side of the line it is in terms of my mental health.
Up.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Because you know that I'm obsessive compulsive by nature.
I do.
And perfectionistic. And I don't think I've ever, been to the level where I could be diagnosed with OCD, clinically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
However, my personality is very controlled and
attention to detail. I'll give it that.
Yes, thank you. So since I've been living alone, I've been doing a lot of cleaning out and organizing. I've been just sort of going through each physical element of my life and trying to create some order in it. Okay, so here's the line. On one side of it, it's a really healthy nesting process. Sure. It's kind of getting to know myself better by discovering what I like in my living space. A healthy way of getting to know me. And then the other side of it is I'm a control freak who's trying to obsessive compulsively create order where, order is an illusion.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think there's probably a little bit of both, but what's your feeling on that?
Well, it reminds me immediately of a couple of weeks ago, we were trying to shoot some videos in here, and there's a curtain over here that all I wanted to do was close the curtain, and you spent good 2 minutes like making sure all the ripples were perfectly evenly spaced. And I was like, it's good, Rye. I think it's good. You can let it go. So yeah, I mean, there might be a tendency for you to be overly perfectionistic in that regard, but I don't think there's, especially like you say, jokes aside, you're living in a new chapter of your life for the first time in many years.
Yeah.
I would imagine if my wife were to take Maple, the kitten, and run off, that I'd have to do the same thing and, like kind of explore what it was like to live in a space by myself for the first time in many years. So I don't think there's any right or wrong unless you're literally just standing in front of the fridge all day being like, mustard, mayonnaise, mustard, ketchup, no, So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But you definitely do have the tendency to focus on the minutia. But I think that's a good thing. I think that's what made you a great drummer. I mean, I remember when you were producing our albums, you talked about we're going to get in the weeds here musically. You talked about subdividing, measures. So if we're in a 4/4 song and it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're like, no, you got to think 16th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 or 8, just to make it a lot more precise and a lot more exact stuff I'd never thought about musically.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can be a benefit. And certainly we've talked about your attention to detail and the audio quality of this show and the beautiful space. So, I mean, I think it's certainly a benefit to you and to our listeners that you have that attention to detail.
Well, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in terms of pursuing perfection and pursuing excellence, which were things we discussed in the first couple episodes. I don't think we've talked about it too much since, but it can drive you to want to create things or do things just right.
Which can also drive you to madness.
Yeah, it can. If it clouds your vision and you all you can see is the imperfections. I don't think it's gotten to that level. I think that it's not creating dysfunction in my life. It's not getting in the way
yet. I'll let you know. I'll be like, Ryan, it's gone too far.
Well, I'm also in the middle right now of the final stage of licensing as a therapist. So that's occupying a lot of my time, but also my mental energy. Because that I don't think I'm obsessing about it more than most people do. It's a big deal. And it's after now 6 years of pursuing this career. Because 3 years of grad school, 4 years total of clinical work, one of which is your traineeship while you're still in school. So 6 years total. And at the very end of that, once you've completed all your hours, you take the licensing exam, which seems backwards, right? You're like been a therapist for 4 years, but it's anyone who's taken it. It's a tough thing, and it requires. But I think for the first, I got a head start. I don't like procrastinating. I tend to, like, when I have a project or something that's coming up, I want to get on it because it'll make me more anxious if I wait to the last minute.
So you were not a term papers due on Monday, Saturday, Sunday night. You get started.
I was at the end of high school and in undergrad, just because I had a lot of other priorities. School wasn't my main priority. I was focusing on the band first and foremost. But going back to grad school and dedicating myself to academia and to this career that I was starting, I took it very seriously. And so I would get my syllabus and I was like, I just want to do all of it now. Just get it all done.
I read all the books, Professor.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's certainly in grad school, I would, if anything, turn in papers early.
Yeah.
And so with this, I wanted to get a head start, but for some reason I was having a hard time really getting into it. I was like in a state where I have my clients, I have the podcast, I have a lot of stuff going on. And I was like, I know I don't want to take this test more than once. I want to pass it the first time, which a lot of people don't.
Right.
So I want to get a head start, but I just couldn't get my head into it. It's like I couldn't focus. I couldn't motivate. I'm like, what is going on? I feel like brain fog. Maybe I'm burnt out. Maybe I need to take a break. And then all of a sudden it hit the month out from the test. And then all of a sudden the fire started burning and I'm like, I can't think about anything else. And I wake up in the morning and I'm like, should I do something tonight? Should I go out with my friends? And I'm like, I really should study more.
Well, I've noticed it's taken up a bigger chunk of your brain. You sent an email yesterday with a missing period. And
Did I?
No, you didn't. I didn't. I'm kidding. But I could see it to be something that you would do because, like I said, I noticed that you definitely focused on it. I mean, we've talked about it a lot, how it's kind of looming on the calendar.
Yeah.
So
there's an end date, you know, this isn't a forever thing. And there's something I love almost as much as organizing, which is completion. When you have a task and then you complete it, that is such just a satisfying feeling. And it's even on the minute level. Like in part of my organizing my house and stuff, I've gone through every drawer, like in the guest bathroom where like Christmas presents where there were soaps and lotions and things shoved in there. I've been pulling everything out and going like, okay, am I either going to toss this right now or am I going to give this thing a try and see if I like lavender? Do you
organize by color, by odor, by size?
Well, no. I'm
three.
All
three separate drawers.
Right. No, but what it comes down to, I'm realizing for me is I have an opportunity to try something new and then throw it away.
Wow.
And so it's finishing something and completing it. I like to throw things away.
Sure.
That's a joy of mine for some reason.
We're not clutter people, but I am definitely we might need this. So I'll just throw it in the attic or I'll throw it we have a shed. I think I've talked about my love for building sheds. I have 2.
Right.
You have 2. Sheds are a big thing when you get into your mid 40s. I don't know why. It's just because you accumulate stuff over the years. And so, I have a shed for like sporting goods for mine and my son's like golf and baseball.
Right.
Then I have a garden shed for like rakes and power tools. And then so it's great. You got a place for a thing, even if it isn't very organized. At least it's not in your dining room. It's in the shed.
You got to always allow yourself one space that's allowed to be just chaos. Yeah. And you could just, it's kind of like in Friends, Monica has the one closet.
Right. And we have the junk drawer and then the junk table and now the junk shed. So, but it is nice to have a place for everything in its own place.
Does the fact that I like to throw things away, does that make me a minimalist? Is that what that is? Or is it just...
You're not a minimalist just based on your studio gear microphone collection and things. Yeah. So, no, I think you just know what you like. And you like it a certain way, even if it is a curtain with a certain amount of, ripples and folds in it.
Well, look.
It's looking good. It looks great. You can't see it at home, but it looks amazing.
The younger generation understands aesthetic, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's all about aesthetic. I've learned, I used to be like so... I hate to use the term OCD, but OCD that it would almost become counter aesthetic because everything needed to be so neat that I needed like right angles and things like that. Well, I guess I still have some.
but look, we've talked about it and we'll talk about it with our guest today about how when you take all the push and pull, give and take out of music, it loses its humanity, it loses its organic feel. You need music to be a little sloppy to feel live and to feel alive. And so when you use a drum machine and make everything perfect, it sounds great, but it sounds like a computer wrote it. It doesn't have any humanity. And so
oh God,
there we go.
What are you doing to me?
It's fine, you'll be fine. We'll leave that like that, and now the studio has some humanity.
Oh, that's close.
It's all right.
Oh, humanity.
Who needs it?
No, you're right. And somehow, for some reason, with music, that was always the case for me. I understood that in music, and maybe it's because I was a drummer, and I had my insecurities about being perfect because I was not metronomic, and I hadn't really ever played to a click track. Yeah. Somehow, I always knew that with music that there was something good about the push and pull and things not having to be perfect all the time, but I still struggle with that in my personal life.
It's a good lesson, and I think like everything else, we can learn something from music, that it's okay to have a little mess on the fringes. So should I push that back to where it was?
No, let's leave that for now.
Before we get into our guest who just arrived, by the way, and he brought his green sweater, thank goodness, because we sent out an email. Everybody who comes on the show has to wear a green sweater, apparently. No, I had a thought. I was thinking, because we've been talking a lot about how we can promote the podcast and get it out to more listeners. So I got to thinking, how does it work in the rap game, right? How does a young up and coming rapper get his name out there? He does a diss track, right? So I was thinking we got to take aim at some high level podcasters, but because we're a mental health podcast, we kind of have to do it with positivity.
Sure.
So allow me, if you will. Hey, Mark Maron, we got a garage, right? We got cats. I got a new cat. Our cat's probably younger than your cat. So what are you going to say now? Right? Hey, Joe Rogan, we work out. He works out. He exercises. We get in the octagon with Ryan. See what happens.
Oh, okay.
No? All right, give it a try. You gonna take a shot at anybody?
Man, I'm not real good at diss tracks.
Yeah, neither am I, obviously. Mark, Joe, nothing personal. Joe, I'm sorry. He was the one who wanted to get in the octagon with you. I was like, I think you're great. But anyway, I think I'll get our name out there, get the aggregators going, and then suddenly they're going to have to respond, and then we'll have a full-on podcast battle going.
I'll be ready for the East Coast, West Coast battle.
Yeah, it's going to be rough.
Okay.
It's going to be rough. So just, get our name out there. Don't mess with Harder to Breathe.
Well, that's what put Death Row and Bad Boy on the map, right?
Exactly. That's my point. So Harder to Breathe podcast, watch out.
Okay, here we go.
Don't mess with us.
2025. Well, we talked a little bit about music. We talked a little bit about production, and we mentioned very briefly our guest today, who is a very special guy, dear to my heart. He happens to be in the room. He just showed up. He is the producer of the album that changed my life, Songs About Jane, as well as many other records, which a lot of us know very well, including Faith No More's big breakthrough and several of their albums. which, how many producers have moments in pop
Right.
culture history, multiple ones like that?
But I mean, you talk about like like you say, a touchstone, a cultural touchstone. Epic was a song that was like, it's heavy, but it was there's a piano. I mean, it was a very seminal moment in music, and for me. So
it was
we'll talk
also
about that.
literally right at the moment that I started playing the drums that
Oh,
that
really?
song came out. I was like late, I want to say like 88, 89
That
around
dude
there.
was heavy. He played his sticks backwards. I remember seeing that in the video.
Oh yeah, there was like always just stick residue floating around him.
Yeah.
He's just chopping those things.
Yep.
Getting to work with Matt Wallace is his name. Great producer. And to have him back here in our lives today.
Full circle moment. Huh?
Yeah, big full circle moment. So we're excited to have him. Don't want to waste too much of it before we just get into it with him.
Absolutely.
So anything you want to mention before we jump into the interview?
No, like I said, Bill Simmons, watch out. We're coming for you.
If you have any comments for us, which he might, Bill Simmons
Yeah,
might.
right. He's a big emailer.
You can email us at hardertobreathepodcast@gmail.com. We would love to respond to some of your comments on the show if we start getting some.
Right. Send us a voicemail and we'll play it and then we'll respond. It'll be very exciting. I don't know how we do that. I don't know if we have the technology for that yet, but
We'll figure it out.
make it work.
Yeah. So without any further ado, here is our conversation with producer Matt Wallace. Matt Wallace, welcome to the Harder to Breathe podcast.
Thanks for inviting me. Thanks to you and Duck for having me come on in and chat with you guys. This is awesome.
This is awesome for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
It's been way too long.
Yes.
We have a history together, which
Yes.
is a very special one.
Yeah.
And I'm just so looking forward to catching up with you. This is
Me
just
too.
a great opportunity for me.
Yes.
So set the stage for our listeners. Where did you guys first meet and how did the history begin?
I think the first place we met, there was a little kind of bar / cafe on Sunset Boulevard
Yes.
that was slightly set down from the road. It was called something or other, but I came to meet you guys because I'd heard your demos.
Yeah.
And I met you there and we kind of chatted about stuff. Then, of course, I saw you at a bunch of shows and then, of course, we did rehearsals. But yeah, that was kind of the first time, I think. Yeah.
So I'm curious because I like that we're jumping right into the sort of the meat of the moment, how
Yes.
we came to know each other.
Yeah.
It's the meat of the
moment.
Sorry. That's the Weird Al version.
Well, sometimes we go kind of chronologically through
Mhm.
people's lives and get their history, but
Right.
our lives intersected at a very important time in both of our
Yes.
lives, I think. And I'm curious what your first impressions were of us.
Okay, so my first impressions were I had demos of your stuff, and I
Mhm.
think I had said this to the band. I said it felt like they were making 3 different records because there was a rock band, there was stuff that was pretty urban, and there was something else like it was kind of pop. So there was that. I loved the songs, and it was before you had written "This Love" and "Harder to Breathe."
Right.
And the song that really brought me into the band was "Sunday Morning Got Me in My Guts."
It's my
And
favorite song.
And I was like, God, this is so good. And so I heard that stuff. But so for better or for worse, I saw you guys play a show at I think it was the Whiskey, and typical of early Maroon, which you recall at the time,
Right.
you had a great verse, chorus. It was, oh my God, this is it. And then the songs would kind of peter out. They'd noodle out. And then live, it was just like a wanky guitar fest. Like every song had these solos. I was with my friend and manager, Frank McDonough. I'm like, oh my God, this is just like, oh, this is just terrible. It's just all it is guitar wanking. And of course, James is an excellent guitar player. And Adam is one of the most intuitive guitar soloists I know of. He just plays right from the gut.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, I don't want to make a record like that. But anyway, I was really intrigued and wanted to work with you guys. Part of the backstory is I was actually offered twice as much money to produce another band.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, they had their own studio with their own racks of hard drives. Because at the time, 750 megabytes of storage cost $750.
Right.
And, we had a very limited budget. So I was offered twice as much money just to produce. This band called Maroon wants me to produce and mix. I was like, oh my God, that's not a whole lot of money. But it was the biggest long shot I ever took in my career. And it was the one that I was most sure of.
Really?
Yes, because I said these songs, I remember talking to you guys, I said, if we can add some bridges, these songs could be classic and they might be coverable. And I felt that if nobody blew it, this was going to be a game changer. And one of the early frustrations was, you may have remembered, you guys were like number 8 on the Japanese radio and there were no records in the stores. And you probably lost like 1 million of sales right there. I was like, oh man, because it was an unknown label, Octone, never put out a record, unknown management, unknown band, unknown everything. But the songs just got under my skin, and I just said, these guys are incredible. I think this is really something. So, and fortunately, Adam and Jesse and James wrote the bridges.
Yeah.
in rehearsal, and that because you get to this level, like chorus 2, this is a great song. Then that bridge,
Yeah. The
you're
bridge
like,
is
you're
everything.
like, are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Stunning. I mean, what a stunning record. It's classic. People still come to me to this day and just talk about that record. Young and old, like that's a defining moment for them. So I was very fortunate to be a part of it because I, as a producer, I'm only as good as the artists or bands I work with. And I would love to take a ton of credit, but the fact of the matter is that really the genesis is from the band.
Yeah.
And so I'm there to help kind of usher and focus and help them bring to fruition their vision. But I'm not the guy who's like a Svengali, like, we're going to do this and then we're going to do that. It's like, I want to be there and kind of, I hear what everyone says. I assimilate it. I go, okay, I think this is what you guys are trying to do. And I try to facilitate it because I'm just, I'm really a helper.
Right.
That's
wait, you got to complete the sliding doors moment. What was the other band and album? Did it end up being successful?
There's a band called Days of the New that had already had some success.
That. Yeah.
They actually had a song that was doing well. They're on like Columbia or some label, and they had a really hefty budget.
But I think you made the right choice.
Of course I made the right choice. Of course I did. But I went out and met them. They had this gorgeous studio, and they had racks and racks of gear, and they had all this stuff. And it looked like on paper, that was the better bet because they'd already had some success. But again, young band, very, very limited budget. And I was like, God, these songs, man. And I remember talking to my manager. I go, I really love this Maroon thing, but I know this other thing's a lot more money and maybe it's a bigger label. And he was like, you got to follow your gut. And the one thing he's always told me is follow through the music you love and the money, come and go, whatever. But at least you'll make a record that you're really proud of. And that was, that's kind of been my career. I've always just kind of follow whatever I want to do. And so fortunately I followed my gut because it wasn't a smart financial decision at the moment. But fast forward, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. It was really, really astute. But I was betting on these. What a great band! What a great band! So
there's a lot that's amazing about that. The fact that you were willing to take that gamble at that moment in your life, which we'll get into in terms of. I mean, you had a young family.
Yes.
You had a lot of stress and a lot of things on your plate at that point.
Tremendous stress, and we can get into it at some point in time. But I cut your record live with wedges. You were the only guy wearing headphones. Everybody else had monitor wedges because I wanted the feel of the band live. So the guys could walk in the room, strap their guitar on and start playing because I had a monitor wedge with the drums and the vocal and their guitar amps. And so they could just kind of play and be free. And the recordings, unfortunately, they're gone because we didn't have money for hard drive space. So I unfortunately committed to erasing a lot of stuff that was really that first pass, the record was done. But as you know, Jesse and Adam were very much enamored with, Lauryn Hill and Outkast. And so we really took a wide left turn and we started making ostensibly a Justin Timberlake record before Justin Timberlake made a record.
I'm sorry, I don't interrupt. Can I just ask like a technical question about that as a producer? When you're recording with live monitors and stuff, doesn't that muddy up a mix that you're picking up stuff?
There's an art and a skill to it. And what you do is if you have the guitar amp right here, what you do is you just move the wedge in front of it so that the microphone doesn't catch it.
Okay.
And so you do things so that you can actually the monitors were thumping, but the cool thing about a guitar is you can hear it. And if you have a guitar in a booth, your guitar and amp respond differently.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in the room, it just kind of, they kind of speak to each other. And it was really essential to capture that energy. And like I said, you're the only guy with headphones. Even Adam, I had him set up that way too, so that I wanted to have spontaneous energy where the transition from walking into a room and starting to play was not punctuated by headphones. And you're like, you got to put them in your guitar strap. And I recorded a lot of bands that way, and some like really bands with a lot more instrumentation. Where I really learned how to do that.
I think Counting Crows did that. They always record live and stuff.
Yeah. But I started on 8-track, so I really knew how to kind of combine things and capture things kind of live.
Cool. Are you talking about in pre-production when we were all set up?
No, at Rumbo. At Rumbo. There were 3 ISO rooms. You were in the main room.
Because in my memory, the night before we went into the studio, we had a big powwow at Jesse's house. Mm-hmm. And we listened to a bunch of records. I think that was your idea, which was, that's a great memory of mine. Because we were listening to everything from hip hop, like Jay-Z and Missy Elliott.
And Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson, Thriller. And of course, Adam was on. He's like, we're going to make Thriller.
Well, we got close.
So, but I was, in my memory though, I wanted it to sound like more like a rock record. Me and James were like, we need it to sound like live drums.
Yes.
But they were adamant, like, we need the deadest drum sound, no room sounds whatsoever. Right. So we shoved my drums into an ISO booth at Rumbo, and everything was like very sectioned off and dead sounding in my memory. But I guess everyone was out in the tracking room.
Well, everyone was in the tracking room. So what I think you're thinking about is that, so we made this, ultimately this urban record. I mixed the song Tangled, sent it to James Dean, who sent me a very, very long, detailed email saying, look, these are 5 skinny white guys with guitars. They're not going on an urban tour. You need to get back to where you guys started.
Yeah.
And so what happens, you came into Can-Am where I was mixing. And then, because I love this, that's my main approach, is to put the drums in a room and I deaden everything down and we cracked the sliding glass door and we had mics out in the room, and the ambience on that record, at least the initial mix I did, was very much you in the room.
Right.
And so that's where we did that. But I could be wrong. But I remember pretty distinctly you were in the middle of the room with headphones, and I know they were in ISO booths. And that's the only way we can kind of achieve that kind of thing.
The only thing I remember different was I was in an ISO booth too.
but you might be right. You might be right. You could be right about that.
But it was this, I got a sense it was different than any record you'd made before that. It was different than the way we had made records before that. And it's just, I'm curious also because, you know, we were, at least half the band, if not all of us, were dead set on this urban thing, right?
Yes.
And we wanted a producer that was like a cool hip hop R&B guy, because we knew we could do the rock thing. We had done that, and we wanted somebody who could do something we hadn't had any experience yet. The label, thank God, was pushing for a pop rock guy who could take us and harness like our live sound and put it on the record. But we weren't seeing that vision. And so when we met with you at that place on Sunset, which I think later became Pink Taco, I think that's
something
what it is
like
now. I'll be totally honest. Our first reaction was like, this guy's got great dad vibes. You know, you were probably 40 at the time, right?
I was actually the age you are now.
Yeah.
When I made that record.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can
Crazy.
you believe it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, we liked you, but we were just like, this is not what we had in our mind. We were thinking something urban and cool. Yeah. And then, so what was your impression of us as people though,
personally?
At that point?
Oh, I thought you guys were great. I really loved, look, the whole chemistry, the whole band. Each of you guys had your own different thing you brought to the table. And I was just really thrilled to be there doing it. And I do remember the very distinct push and pull with James in particular pushing for a rock band. And you were definitely like, this is where we got to go. This is really who the band is. And Adam and Jesse really pushing for urban. Because I still have the rough mixes of that stuff. It's very, very different. In fact, I was talking to Chris, your manager, a few years ago, because I was putting together all these different, the rough mixes I had done. And by the way, I've got some amazing rehearsal recordings. And you, in one of them, were saying something like, wouldn't that be, like, can you guys ever imagine if any of these things became a hit? And you guys are talking about it. You're young. Nothing's happened yet. And you're like, you know, it was almost like, Joe, like, you know, like, what if this ever happened? Like, nah, it's not going to happen. It's really interesting to hear a young band that I felt had that potential, but you guys almost couldn't even imagine, like, could we really, and you guys did. I mean, it's a groundbreaking record that affected so many people and got a Grammy, you know, won a Grammy, and just like, and I mean, I had friends,
that Grammy right there.
I had friends who at the time were touring like in different countries. They're like, I'd get, you know, like emails like, hey, I'm in Australia. I'm hearing, you know, this love. And he was like, what? And someone else is like in Belgium. Like, I'm hearing, it's like, it was really something to see that happen. Yeah. Really was something. Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, but Nile Rodgers was actually initially talked to to do the record. And from what I understand, he said, I can't make a record for that amount of money.
Yeah. He passed on it because of the budget. That was the only reason. He loved us. We jammed with him.
Great. He would have been great.
He would have been great. And we were jazzed about it. I mean, obviously his track record and all the records he's made. We jammed with him.
That sounds like that vibe that you're going for.
Oh yeah,
he
would have been.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was kind of like that, a little bit of disco vibe, a little bit of funk vibe. I mean, it would have been, but it's like, but then we probably would have lost something because there was something, what I think at the time, I didn't fully appreciate everything that you brought to the table, to be honest with you, because I know that we were cocky kids.
Yes, Adam in particular.
Yeah.
But everybody, but yeah, there's definitely a cockiness about it that vacillate between being super cocky, like, oh my God, you guys haven't even, you know, you made your record obviously with your previous band, but and then sometimes you'd be a little more humble, but yeah, I mean, Adam probably never lost that kind of.
It's lead singer energy. You need to have it. Right?
Yeah, you got it. Well, he was leaning into that. I think he had to step up and be the front man, and I think he was owning that ego that's required to be in that role. And it's probably, I'm sure, if anything, taken off from there. But I think that, you know, I look back and I have obviously mostly gratitude and great memories of that, but I also have some regrets because of my attitude. I feel like I was 23, 24 at the time. So I don't really have the I was a teenager still excuse, but I was a young man.
Yeah.
And I think as a teenager, I just didn't have a lot of respect for authority for some reason.
Sure.
It wasn't like I was a rebellious kid. I wasn't getting in trouble, but I just when somebody told me what to do or gave me constructive criticism, my instinct was to push back a little bit. And so in my memory on both records, the record we made for Reprise with Rob Cavallo and then Songs About Jane with You, I feel like I had a good relationship with the producer, but I also had a little bit of well, I don't know. He thinks he knows what he's talking about. Oh, what did he do? Faith No More?
That little band.
But honestly, I think that's the right attitude.
Is it?
I do. Here's the thing. I think producers can bring a lot to the table. And I think sometimes, I feel like I try to add that 10 or 15%. But sometimes producers can think that they're the rock star and that they are the most important person. And the reality is this. The band's name is front and center on the cover. And it's in the largest print. The producer's on the back or in the sleeve. And we're really there to serve the artist. And sometimes producers are absolutely correct. You guys, you got to trust me. You got to do this. And sometimes the band says, listen, that's just not who we are. And we're going to do this. I know you want us to do this other thing, but we're going to do this. And I think that creative tension is essential to making great records. And I think that you do have to have a belief in yourself and a cockiness, because I've worked with artists who were well known, and then I would kind of push them into a direction I thought that's who they were, but then they would work with someone else and they'd sound different and different and different. So where's their center?
Yeah.
You guys had a center, and it is important that I could expand it and move it and shift it, but it had to be sturdy. Otherwise people would just roll over you. And your attitude, obviously to a greater or lesser extent, is essential to making great records. Absolutely. 100%. And I'm the guy who's going to have to fight against it sometimes. I have to push. But that's what makes it good, because you have to stand up for yourself, go listen. Because my whole thing is I'll tell an artist or a band 3 times if I believe something's important. And the third time I go, listen, this is really important. I think you got to listen. But if you want to do it the other way, I will back you 100%. And that's my tipping point. I'm like, push, push, push. Now, are you sure you guys want to do this other thing or not do this? I'm in 100%. Let's push it.
So they typically get the final say in terms of it's their product at the end of the day.
Yeah, and because for me, I feel like you got a mountain of a label and all the stuff that's just like a big wave crashing down on this band. And for me, when push comes to shove, I gotta stand with the band, because you need that momentum to stand up against this thing that's pushing against you. And I think that and oftentimes, even if it's not my idea, and this has happened many times where I go, I don't agree with you, but when we talk to the label, I'm 100%.
Yeah.
Because you need that momentum to push, just so you can get some of your way. And I recognize that early on, and I really always lean towards artist and band. Even when if we can fight and fuck you, man, we got to do this way. And I go, okay, you guys are assholes. We'll do it your way. Hang on, talk to you later. Yeah, listen, this is what the band wants to do.
Yeah.
And do you find that that's the initial step in terms of meeting with a band is finding out what that dynamic would be and where you fit in? Because I think about are you a musician yourself?
To call me a musician would be stretching the definition. I can play drums, I can play guitar, I can play bass, I can sing background vocals. But if I were a musician, I would be a musician.
Yeah,
and you'd hear my records. But I'm not. But I have enough information that I can talk to people about chord voicing and beats and things like that. But I am not.
Well, I just think in terms of I think back to the Weezer album, for example. Rick Ocasek produced that album.
Right.
Now, if you're sitting in a room and you're a young band and Rick Ocasek, who's one of the great pop rock writers, says it should be this, you go, okay. But if a guy who has dad energy says that should be a shaker, not a tambourine, you go, fuck you, I'm the drummer, right? But finding that dynamic and that.
But even Rick Ocasek was the absolutely right guy for the Cars.
Right.
But with Weezer, honestly, the Cars and Weezer are very, very, very different animals. And Rick Ocasek, supremely talented. But again, you have to have some pushback because it's a Weezer record.
Yeah.
If it ended up sounding like the Cars, you'd be like, well, that was fucked up that producer did that. Because it should sound like Weezer. No matter what happens, it should sound like the band or the artist. That's the goal.
Well, I came to appreciate so much after the fact, just how much you had to negotiate through in the process of first meeting us, winning us over, just the personalities within the band, the different egos, and because we were all very opinionated. We fought about everything. You had to sort through. I mean, I really look back and I'm like, how did anyone ever work with us? Because everything was an argument that went on for 2 hours. And then you had the record label, and oftentimes the contention between the band and the label, which is always the case, but in particular if you have big egos in the band. And you were right in the middle of it, and how you sort through all the ideas, how you try to keep everyone happy and keep the ship moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
I didn't see all of that as much at the time as I do in retrospect, understanding how much that is to juggle.
Yeah, it's a lot. You know, the thing that is always interesting to me, if as a producer you make a record and you, at the end of the day, and the band was like, you know, you didn't even do anything. It's like, oh my god, the mind stuff I had to kind of walk around. And yes, and look, there's my ex-wife used to say, all you do when you go to work is you just boss people around. It's like, what?
No,
I've got this monolithic label, and I've got a band with egos, and I'm right in the middle, and they're both pushing against each other, and I'm like, hey, hang on a second. I think we can work this out. And so to me, it's really being very, very able to compromise when you need to and when to stand firm when you have to. And it's really difficult. People don't realize how difficult it is when you have all this pressure to bear on you. And for me, every night, like before I start a project, I think, I go, man, I hope I don't mess this up, because I will make 3 or 4 records this year, but this band, this is it.
Yeah.
And so I really don't want to lead them the wrong way. I don't want to make the wrong decisions, because they are going to live or die by this. I'm going to an extent, but they really are. So that's why I also will lean in their direction. Like, you know, you're not feeling this, you know, polka vibe. Okay, man, you guys gotta play it. So I hear you. Let's find a way that works for you. And again, I'm always figuring like, what do we have to push? What can I kind of let back on and go, listen, they got to have some say in this, because it's your record. You know, it's really.
And you've got that stress and that push and pull of managing those egos. And then you go home and you have your own life and stress and egos as well that no one at 24 wants to hear about.
Yeah,
right.
No 24 will go, oh, your mortgage is, you know what I mean? Or your marriage is on the rock.
It's interesting because I remembered one of the things that happened on the record, and I got your book, and I go, man, I wonder if Brian remembered that. And sure enough, you did. And so part of the backstory is this: my son has special needs. He's got autism. So during the day, I'm like having to deal with all this stuff. And my wife was ill and in bed most of the time. She was kind of bedbound. So I'm, you know, trying to make a record. And I remember at that time, I was at a point right before Maroon 5, I was like, you know, if I have to work 12 and 14-hour days, work 6 days a week, and I can't see my family, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to do this for a job, because it's a horrible job. It really is. It's like being an actor where you leave for 3 months. It's like, I have to find a way so that I can still be in with the band and have a trusted engineer to work there, but I have to go home for a couple hours a night, you know, make dinner, tuck the kids in, and be able to do that, because otherwise I was not going to do it. And I remember I came back one day and you were like, you know, whatever you're saying. And the honest thing is that I was really defensive at the time. If I'd been able to own it, I'd be like, yeah, Ryan, I hear you, man. It's a pain in the butt, but I got to go take care of my family. And honestly, they're a pain in the butt too, but you know, I hear you. But I was defensive and I got upset, you know. And
what was the incident that you're both referencing?
Well, so I'd gone and taken care of my family. I came back like 9:00 at night, and you were like, hey, what are you doing? You should be here. Like, why are you leaving? And I forgot that I'd said fuck you, so I apologize about that. But I remember being upset, and it was because, but like I'm between a rock and a hard place with a label in the band. I'm between making a living and taking care of a family that's faltering. And so
it was a tense moment. I remember. It was a moment you said fuck you, and it got silent, and everyone was kind of like, because you could feel like that we were all under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, and we were probably about 2/3 of the way into the album, and we're all feeling, at least in the band, I was having conversations with Adam like, we're fucking this up. We're dropping the ball. We had visions of what this is going to be, and it's not turning out the way we wanted it to. So we were stressed out. And then we have these huge egos, and we're thinking, we're working around the clock. We're working till 2 a.m. And in my memory, and maybe you remember this differently, because I remember you getting defensive, but I remember myself being a little shit. Honestly, I remember, this is how I remember the moment. We were all in a circle. The whole band was there, and it was like probably noon the day after a night that when you'd gone home to your family. And we had done a bunch of work after you left, and we're discussing like what we'd done, and we're catching you up, and you were like maybe pushing back a little bit. Well, I don't think that's a good idea. I think we need to go this direction, whatever. And I said, well, maybe you would have known about it if you had been here.
True. Yeah, sure.
Like something like that. And you were just like, fuck you. And I was like,
Sorry about that.
No, but
No,
honestly,
that's the right response.
honestly, I mean, you apologized to me several times for that.
Okay,
Even
good.
years later, like we
Okay,
were
good.
at a show, a Maroon 5 show,
Yes.
and you apologized. I was like, dude, you did not need to apologize for many reasons for that at all. You were perfectly in the right to tell me to fuck off.
Right.
And also because that doesn't color my opinion of you or that of my memory of the album at all.
Right.
But even more time has passed since then, and I've had opportunities on the show to make amends. So in this moment, I'd like to make amends to you for my fault completely. I don't see, especially understanding the stress that you were under, being in my 40s now and knowing that you had a family, that you had, you know, a kid with special needs, you were dealing with your wife and what she was going through. And just self-care in general, you know, being able to advocate for yourself in that moment.
Well,
I mean, for me, I was an entitled little shit who had no perspective, who really was probably acting out my problems with authority on you in that moment. So I apologize.
That's good. Well, you know, part of the thing for me that was frustrating is that people like Rick Rubin and Jimmy Iovine were notorious for never showing up.
Right.
And they were making records. But I knew a lot of the engineers that worked with Rick Rubin. It's like they were doing all the stuff. I mean, I would talk to him. I go, where's Rick? I don't know. He hasn't been around for a while. It's like, oh, well, you know. And I know when Metallica recorded across the street from my studio, like he showed up for tracking, and then he was gone the rest of the time. And they would take CDs out to him in Malibu to listen to. He'd make notes, come back to Metallica because we're furious, you know. So I was trying to find a middle ground between that because that wasn't my style. I was an in the trenches producer. I wanted to be there. I wanted to feel it. I wanted to be part of it. But I also had to find a way to have family. And I have, you know, producer friends at that time would say, yeah, I'd see my kids on Sundays. I go, I can't do that. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to quit. I'll do anything. And I had such passion for music, but I couldn't have a family and not be participant.
Yeah.
And I understand your side of it because you're feeling the pressure that the record's not going where it should be. The producer's not around. So I understand that stuff, you know.
But it strikes me, knowing you for as long as I have, that I can't believe you, like, I would never see that coming out of you. You're such an empathic and compassionate person. And maybe that's the development over the years. But it also makes me think of that old saying, it's like, you never know what people are going through. You know, even if you're walking by and somebody bumps you, or it's like they could be having the worst day of their life. And at 24, you can't know what I couldn't have known, you know, and I have a family now, and that's a priority. So if I was like, Ryan, I can't do a podcast today, I got to be like, well, maybe if you were here, fuck you. I'd say fuck you as well.
Yeah.
But you bring up a good point about self-care.
Yeah.
When you're young and you're full of piss and vinegar, that doesn't exist. You're just taking on the world and you're just plowing through it.
Yeah.
And then as you get older and life starts to hit you, because like when my daughter went to college, she was so black and white about things. I go, you know, there's a lot of gray.
Yeah.
And everything you're talking about, I said, as you get older, you're going to see. And for me, that was the beginning of me getting self-care of like, I got to find a way to get through this and live in this profession. And also during that time, and I still am, I'm an avid hiker. I used to go hike in the mornings, and people would say like, you know, why are you doing that? I go, I know this is going to sound like a joke, but it's hiking or heroin. If I don't do something, I will fall apart, you know, and I had to do something. That was part of the self-care thing too, because that's all life is growing up and seeing what's pressuring you. And then how do you find ways to diffuse the pressure? Because it will almost always just get worse.
Yeah.
And there'll be moments when it spikes and you're like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And so having self-care or having people you can lean into and go, hey man, I'm having a rough time here. And they go, okay, here's what you can do. And by the way, drugs, alcohol, sex, work, the separate things, sex and work as separate things, those addictions can be beneficial for the short term.
Sure.
And they work marvelously
Yeah.
until the issue that's still there doesn't dissipate.
Right.
And you're
They're distractions.
So you got all these issues, and then you have this other thing that becomes an issue too. And then you're really in serious trouble. So you have to find a way to get to self-care so you can, because life is a marathon, it's not a sprint, and it's brutal. Life is brutal at times. It's beautiful, but man, at times it can bring you to your knees, and you're just like, you know, because I had days like that at my home where I walked out the door, I go, I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep, you know, shoring up this family that's, you know, and I'm it.
And I do feel like that a younger generation is more aware of self-care and the importance of it. I mean, we see it with the work from home people who are like, no, I'm more productive at home, you know, and I think it's a benefit to the society at large that people understand the importance of that. And also to tie it back to the music, when you're talking about there being shades of gray, you know, I was thinking about when I was younger, if it was music I didn't like, I didn't just go, that wasn't for me. I actively disliked it. You know, I was like, I hate that. I hate that band. It's crap. Now, as I'm older, I'm like, well, it's not for me, but I can appreciate the positive parts of it. And I would imagine that, you know, we talked about the train song, for example, that you mixed that got sort of your name out there. You know, 20 years ago, if I had heard that and I'd been like, I don't like that. And I don't want to be associated with anybody who was involved with that. Versus now where I can go, well, I can appreciate the great drum sound on that record or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think there is a perspective that helps us, you know, kind of see things bigger picture as we get older.
Yeah.
You probably wish you had that then, so you wouldn't have been so.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have,
You know?
I look back at the pride of youth, and it's just like you can be so narrow focused and see things only from your perspective, and it with the benefit of time. I wanted to ask you because you talk about self-care and the stress that you were under in that moment, but you had a history of anxiety before that, right? Because I was watching your interview with Benj Gershman, and you were having panic attacks when you were in high school, even, right?
I was having, before anybody before anyone knew the term panic attack, I was having substantial ones. So much so that I ended up in ambulance rides a number of times. I'd be out with friends, and I just and it was so bad. I would pass out. And the first time it happened, I passed out. I was at my home, and my parents came in there, and I didn't come to till I was already in the ambulance. So the time it took them to find me, call the ambulance, have them pick me up, and it was just the anxiety. I actually dropped out of UC Berkeley because I couldn't maintain. And so I just, I couldn't do it. They put me on like anti-seizure medicine, which was bad. They put me on special diets. And of course my dad, like, you should just relax. It's like, yeah, that'd be great. I wish I had thought of that.
Be happy.
Yeah, be happy. And it went on for about a decade of that stuff, and to the point where I moved from the Bay Area to Los Angeles, and I was working for Slash Records, and my job was an A&R guy and staff producer. And I remember going into the Club Lingerie to see a band, and the murmur of the crowd is the same sound and frequency of me when I was coming to after passing out. And it was triggering me. And I had to go outside and just like take deep breaths and just like, okay. And just try to and it's my job. I got to go back in there and be in that things. And it was brutal. It was really, really rough. And nobody knew what it was. I had to, on my own, figure this crap out, learn how to do it. And I ended up, people like Tim Pagnotta from, who's a writer now, but he was in this band Sugarcoat, used to call me from payphones on the road, like, I'm having a panic attack. Okay, here's what you got to do. And a lot of people, because I white knuckled through life. I remember going on dates, driving across the Bay Bridge, slapping my face so I didn't feel like I was going to pass out. And this girl sitting next to me, like, what are you doing? I'm like, it was brutal, just really rough.
Well, I got to be a therapist here for a minute because it's my nature.
Dig in, get ready.
Here we go.
Do you have a sense, because that doesn't come from nowhere, right? I mean, do you have a sense as to what was causing the level of anxiety in you that was leading to these attacks? I mean, was it something from earlier in your life, or was there something going on at that time? Or?
I don't know. The only thing that could even be part of the collective vibe that got me there was early on in my life. My dad was a pilot, and he would leave for like, a week at a time. And my parents taught me to be like responsible for my younger sister and brother, and be the man of the house. I think at that time that made sense. But for me at that young age, like always having to be responsible for other people was way, way too much. And plus, because my brother's a little shithead, and he would like go try to start fights with people that could kill him. And I'd be there, hey, he's just being a kid, don't beat him up, kind of thing. My whole thing was I took on other people's emotional well-being. And so I would be like, how can I take care of you? How can I take care of you? And to the point when I say had a relationship with somebody and I had something I had to say to them, but I knew it was going to hurt their feelings, I would postpone it till the moment I had to mention it. And then of course it was bad, because then it was like, why didn't you tell me earlier? And that was the thing. And so now in my current relationship, for better or for worse, when I first met her, I unfortunately did the dump truck of emotions, which was really the wrong way to go. But I knew that if I didn't say things that were important early, I would keep waiting and postponing it, and I wouldn't say it. So now I'm like, if it's happening, I'm going to say it. And I had to start living my life that way. And it's like, I'm sorry if you're going to have an emotional response to it, but I'm just going to say that here's my truth, and however you deal with it is going to be on you, but I'm going to just say it.
I live that way too now. We've talked about it on the show that sometimes in my relationship with my wife, it's it's less than romantic, where I'd be like, in the minute something becomes an issue, I'm going to bring it up, and it may cause a fight, but it's better than the fight I'll have 2 years from now if I don't mention it.
Absolutely. And the one thing I learned a couple things. If you're in a relationship with someone, my gal and I find this external source that's the problem. Instead of me pointing at her, it's like, you're the problem. She's like, you're the problem. We go, okay, between the two of us, there's this problem that's outside us. Now we can work collaboratively together. And the other thing I've learned is that whatever's in front of me, I want to go through it as quickly and as hard as possible. Because the idea of dancing around issues or walking around them or pretending they're not there, it's like, I want to plow through it. I hate growth. I hate the process. I hate the energy I have to put into it. I hate paying for therapists. I hate it. But if you plow through it and you realize that on the other side of that is the good stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because for me, I don't like the process, but I like the man I've become. But all the stress and the horror and all the torment, can't stand it. But who I've become
It's worth
is
it.
the good stuff. And to go even further, like my dad my dad over his later years became very, very, very unkind and would say all these kind of things to me that were really just unpleasant. And I ended up going to therapy to learn how to deal with him. And he should have been the one going to therapy. But I learned almost like the Matrix. I could dodge the bullets. And then he'd write me these emails about like how bad I was. But then he'd talk about his childhood. And I focus on that. I'd be like, hey, I'm really sorry nobody was there for you when you were a kid. That was really too bad. And I learned not to get into this thing of this like defending myself which I was really good at doing.
And he'd go, wait, what? Why are you being nice?
Yeah, exactly. So I did that. And then
Empathy is disarming.
Yeah, right.
And the other thing I learned, and this is going to be, people aren't going to understand it, but the worst things that happen to you are absolute gifts. Because how I learned to deal with my dad made me deal with other people. And it was a gift at the time. I was like, I at one time I wrote a letter basically saying F you to him. I wasn't going to talk to him again. I was just tired of this stuff. He had stuff that I did when I was like a teenager. He was bringing up. I was like, I'm like 40 years old. What's the deal? Anyway, so, but those are unintentional gifts that you learn who you are and you learn what you're okay with. And are you going to grow from this, or are you going to shrink and you're going to become like an angry person who just then spits out that same stuff that's thrown on you? Or do you rise above it and go, okay, what can I do with this energy? And how can I let it go past me? Like I did Kung Fu years ago. You just take the energy, you let it direct it away from you. Karate is more focused. You hit them head on, but Kung Fu is like, okay, move you over here. Oh, you're angry. How about over here? And the thing you probably, when someone's being unpleasant with you, it's not even about you. It's about their own internal stuff. And so all they're doing is you just happen to be standing there.
Yeah.
And they're like, here's all this shit. And you're like, well, it's not about me, but I'm sorry you feel bad.
Yeah. It's one of the 4 agreements. Nothing is personal.
It really, really isn't. And it's so hard to remember that
Yeah.
at certain
In the
times.
moment when you want to just say fuck you to a little shit.
Exactly.
Giving you.
It feels personal.
Yeah.
It does. It does. Things, we're humans. We're going to feel personal about things. And even intellectually, we can say it's not about me, but it's still, we have that automatic response, where that happens. And I forgot who said it. I think it was Dr. Viktor Frankl said there's a thing that happens and there's your response and there's space to kind of go, okay, hang on a second. What does this mean? Is this about me? How do I respond?
Respond, don't react.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
just-
So you talked about these things that are gifts, where bad things happen, or you have to go through hard times, and it's a gift because you learn something from it, you grow from it. You have the relationship with your dad. You have the too much responsibility early in your life, caring for your siblings. You're having these panic attacks, these anxiety attacks in your teenage years. Was that the impetus for finding ways to take care of yourself better? Was the learning? What was the upside of that hard time?
Well, the upside is I had to learn how to do it. I don't think I had the wherewithal, or I think at that time people weren't talking about therapy so much. So I just had to, on my own, learn how to breathe through things. I had to learn how to get on top of it and just get over it. So that's what I had to do, because there was no one was coming to save me. And that lasted, I was at UC Berkeley when I dropped. So it started in high school, senior year, dropped out of Berkeley, and then I came to LA in '88. So this went on for like 10 years. And it I finally got a handle on it.
So is that why you had the sort of self-awareness and the wherewithal when it came to real life stuff where you have major responsibilities and stresses in your life, and you're able in that moment to advocate for yourself, to set boundaries, to be able to know what's going to be healthy for you and what's not? I think
that's part of it. I think that you're right. I think that's a good through line, that I did have to advocate for myself, because if I did continue 12, 14-hour work days in the studio, I would get to that place of anxiety and stress. And honestly, I wouldn't be a together enough human being to not only help you make your record, I wouldn't be a together enough person to be home and be a dad.
Yeah.
So I had to find a way to go, I know the place is on fire right now, but I got to go outside. I'm going to cool down, then I'm going to go back in and figure things out. And you have being able to walk away from what appear to be acute situations is really important. And also along the way, even before it becomes acute, hey, I know you need me right now, but listen, I got to go have some downtime because otherwise I'm not going to be functional. I'm going to collapse.
Yeah.
And that's you. And I think it goes back to that concept of, when you're on an airplane, you put your oxygen mask on first, and then you give it to your kid or your spouse or whatever, but you got to get yourself taken care of. So you're like, okay, I'm cool. All right. Who needs something? And with my son with the autism, man, that taught me incredible patience, like patience beyond everything that I'd ever imagined. Like, oh, wow, I have to be patient here. I have to my idea of how this should go, my idea of the wavelength or the momentum or the timing has to slow down because this person is not there. And I have to really slow down and be in their space and go, okay, how do you do this? Because with my son, I used to do this, like he would just freak out. And I have to do this whole thing where I would hold him. He'd have his knees to his chest. I'd hold the bottom of his feet and hold him just so he could kind of settle himself down. Like, okay, and then he had OCD. I had to walk him through that. We had to do all these exercises. I mean, it was just like going home from you guys. I would go and do exercises with him about OCD.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because I'd put his stuffed animal down for like 5 seconds. Like, no. Okay, put it back. Okay, now we'll do it for 10 seconds. Now we'll put it down. Now we're going to walk out of the room and we're going to come back and you're going to be okay with that. But anyway, it was a lot.
So you had to deal with my OCD, and then you had to go deal with his OCD.
Yeah, and reading your book, your OCD. And I have a bit of it that when I was in school or classrooms, I would either count light bulbs or I'd count the window panes. And even with my shoes, when I walk, I'm always kicking my socks up because I thought they were falling. Now I have no hair there because of an OCD thing. I always had to, so I'm really tuned in to OCD, not to the level I know you had. My son had horrific OCD. So I think because I've been through the fire to an extent, I can see other people's challenges and I can go, yeah, man, that's really tough. Instead of going like, what the hell, man? Come on, man, just buck up, be cool. So
we loved your son. He was so
Thanks.
adorable.
Thanks.
He would come in, you'd bring him in, and both your kids were adorable. But I mean, he was very outgoing. I didn't know a lot about autism spectrum at the time. So it didn't make sense to me when you told me that was his diagnosis, because he was very social.
Yes.
And just very inquisitive, like always asking a lot of questions and very present.
Yeah.
So it was, I mean, how's he doing? Is
he's doing okay, but it's interesting that you say that because my parents used to say he seems fine. The thing of it is that autistic kids are better with adults because they're more predictable and they're more patient. So my dad, like, he seems fine. I go, well, you should watch him with his peers. Because they come up and he starts doing his thing and they're like, yeah, later. So I think he was really good with adults, and he was inquisitive, but that inquisitiveness can also become perseveration, where then it's just this thing again and again and again and again. You're like, dude, enough, anyway. Yeah. So, but he's doing all right. I mean, he's still struggling. It's a long, long, long story that gets into a whole other thing, but he has somebody in his life that is keeping him somewhat limited. I don't want to go into much detail because it's his own life, but he's an amazing person. He's beautiful and has a great heart. And I'm trying to help him launch, and my daughter's doing great. She's fantastic. She's got her life together. She doesn't need anything from me. And it's really great. And we have a great relationship. I just met her for breakfast and we had to hash through some family stuff. And I want authenticity from people. I don't want people to have to pretend around me or be anything other than themselves. And just like, hey, what's going on? And then we had a discussion this morning. I said, look, I don't really want to have to do this, but we have to talk about some things that are kind of difficult. So let's kind of get through it. And we talked about stuff. And one of the things that she's reminded me about when I was a parent for her and my son, the one thing I did do was when, if I wasn't like a great dad, I'd say, hey, listen, I'm really sorry. Not really a good dad there. I can do better. And, let's try again later, or let me try again tomorrow. And because I really wanted to model that even if you're a parent and you're supposed to know everything, you're fallible, and you can make stupid decisions. You can go, hey, look, I'm really sorry. That was harmful, or whatever happened, whatever I said or is not cool. So let me, I want to own it, and I wanted them to learn that was really important. So
that's amazing. You have so many incredibly evolved, mature attitudes about relationships, about parenting. Were those things that you had to learn the hard way? Is this therapy that you learn a lot of this stuff? Or?
The hard way.
Yeah.
I made every horrible, not horrible, terrible, but I mean, I made plenty of mistakes, and I'm a human being, and I'm an asshole at times, and I'm also really, really good. I just had to learn it, and I did go to therapy for many, many years, and still do, because I just have to continue to learn. I mean, as you well know, when you're a young person, you learn modes of operating that work to deal with whatever you're dealing with, say within your familial situation.
Mm-hmm.
And those things work. Like me, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. You need to take care of. But so then I found relationships where I was taking care of these women, and that wasn't healthy for me. And so a lot of times you learn that these things that work for you, you get out in the real world, and those are things you actually have to do away with. That's the armor you need to throw in the trash, and you need to be this pink, thing where you're fresh and you're in there, and you got to relearn this new. Yeah. It's like a lobster; they lose their shell, and they're just like so super vulnerable. And you got to find new ways to get through life, and that's the biggest lesson is unlearning things that helped you survive.
Yeah,
but also that it's a constantly changing world, and the relationship that you have with your son is different than the one you have with your daughter, and the one that you have with your dad. So, like we've talked about it, where a lot of times people say, "Well, I'm gonna correct all the mistakes that my parents made with my kid," but your kid is different than you, so they don't need to be parented the way you needed to be parented. They need a unique experience, and so you have to be malleable. You have to be able to evolve for each individual relationship, each individual situation.
Also, our tendency, I think, is to, with the kind of traumas you're describing, where you have a relationship that's formative, that you had armor you had to wear, you had a way you had to engage to survive, to protect yourself. What happens is we tend to then go forward and either emulate the exact same thing and become the thing because it's what we know, or we overcompensate and do the opposite. So what you're describing is like, I'm not going to be what my dad was. I'm not going to be what my mom was, whatever. And then you go to this other extreme, and all of a sudden you're too much. If they were distant, I'm emotionally available all the time, and it's super sensitive. And it's like, now you're smothering your kids, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, so it's always about finding that balance point, right? You got to find the sweet spot in between, and that's not going to be comfortable for anyone because it's totally unfamiliar.
It is. And you can't become the anti-dad or anti-mom. Right. Absolutely. And the other thing, to kind of go back to what you were saying, when you have two different kids, they almost require two different parents.
Exactly.
But you have the same two people who are trying to go, okay, my son needed this, I had to give him all this stuff, and then my daughter had to do something different, and switching between those two. I mean, you have two children? Or?
I don't. I have one, but I have a sister who, growing up, I was a discipline problem. I was crazy in school, and I got in trouble all the time. I got yelled at. I remember one day my sister, who was like a straight A student, quiet, she came home and she had gotten a detention for something, and my parents laughed their heads off. And I remember being so angry because they were like, "Oh, Allie finally got in trouble. We love it. Like, congratulations." And I was like, "Are you kidding? I get it." But it's a different skill set to parent a really smart, quiet kid versus a idiot kid who gets in trouble all the time.
And as you've kind of touched on in your book, being the perfect kid is also another trauma response.
It is.
You can just go, "Well, I'm like, that kid's perfect." It's like, that's a problem. Yeah. That's a problem. The fact that, that she only had one discipline thing is a problem.
Right. She needed to get in trouble more.
Yeah. My daughter did the same thing. Perfect student, AP, this and that. And she finally got in trouble one time, finally. But that's not ideal either. Everyone should just kind of have some flow and get in trouble or not get in trouble and don't be the total
straight
bad
A
kid
student,
or straight A student. All that. So all that stuff is, and I think it's difficult to discern whether someone in front of you is truly healthy or they're just holding it together by being perfect or being the fuck up or the whatever it is, the kid who always has attention. It's also getting attention by getting in trouble is a way to get attention. That actually is a thing that does work.
That was me.
But you did it and it actually worked. It was important to find that way to get that. Now, when you get older and you're in a job, well, that doesn't work so much. But as a kid,
unless you become an actor,
then
everybody gives you attention. Yeah.
But I mean, it's really interesting things that seem to not really work. You go, wow, it's like, well, it worked. You got the attention that you felt you needed. Maybe you felt like you weren't getting enough attention. Maybe your sister was getting more attention. Who knows? It's the whole thing is such a mystery and such fertile ground to really learn and become a real good human and really rise to our better selves. I mean, I hate the process. I hate it. I just like, I don't want to learn
the lobster probably doesn't enjoy molting either.
I don't think they do, but I just like, yeah, I gotta learn again. I gotta try this thing again.
Well, you figured out so much. You've learned from your own struggles in your life, the things that you had to overcome. You've learned a lot in parenting and figuring out how to navigate those relationships. You've had to go through relationships to get to what sounds like you're now in a pretty healthy one, or at least one you
Yes.
guys have a really good approach to
Yes.
dealing with. I'm curious what you've learned in your relationships with the people that you've worked with. Because musicians are a particular breed. I don't want to overgeneralize,
Yeah.
but you're dealing with, we talked about big egos a lot of the time.
Mhm.
You're navigating, we talk about being a band, like being married to 4 or 5 people at
Yes.
the same time.
Yes.
And I don't know what that makes you in that case, maybe the marriage counselor
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like that. What, I mean, you've learned so much from all these personal relationships. What has your professional life taught you about people?
Oh man, that's a good question. I have to probably think about that to give you a good response. But the one thing I did learn, kind of around the time I was working with you guys with Maroon, was I spent about a decade when I was still trying to like be a people pleaser, and I always like made records on time, and everyone kind of stayed in their comfort zone, and nobody did anything wrong. And it was sometime right, I forgot what project, couple before working with you, I learned that if we're not open to falling flat on our face, we were never going to make a great record.
Mm.
Because you have to be ready to look like a total asshole and just go the absolute wrong way for you to find the right path. And sometimes with bands you need a little push. And in terms of Maroon, we actually got it right when we first tracked it, but we didn't realize it till we went around the path and made the wrong record.
Yeah.
Till we came back like, oh, I guess we were right the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just trusting that process and but again, you have to be willing to really make a huge mistake.
Yeah,
And-
take a
and
big swing.
You have to be ready to do it because otherwise you're going to always stay in your comfort zone. You're going to color in the lines and you're never going to do anything of any real substance. You have to risk everything. You
It's
have to.
funny you talk about it coming full circle in that way, because you talked at the top about Sunday Morning was the song,
Yeah.
right? When I listen to the record now, that is the recording that makes me most pleased. Both because of the song. I know that's a good song.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first song. It's the oldest song on the record. It was the
Yes.
first one of that batch that we wrote. But also because it was one of the last songs we came back to
Uh-huh.
and re-recorded the drums on.
And the drums are glorious.
It's just like a live,
so good.
breathy live take.
It's so good. And I have to tell you, I know you've had struggles with drumming. You did a great job on that record.
Thank you.
You really did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You really did.
Thank you.
The grooves are beautiful.
Especially that one.
That one
Yeah.
feels effortless.
Hmm.
That's the one song on the record that the drums feel effortless. And they're open and they flow. The whole record. You
That's
did a
what I love
really
about it,
good
too.
job. And I hope you just remember that. You did a great job.
Thank
And
you.
that was
man.
a tough record. And I feel for you just knowing your story after the fact, because we ran into each other like 2011 at that Maroon 5 concert. And we were talking. I just remember you talking about, you damaged your arm from pitching and things like that. And to me, I have to say, my heart really feels for you to work 10 plus years to get to the top and do all the work you did and then have to walk away at the peak of something that you worked so hard for. I understand your moving into drinking and addiction after that. I would feel the same way. I think you worked so hard. You were at Kara's Flowers, and I remember I was with you guys the day you got your either gold or platinum record. I think you played that place out in Malibu
Mhm.
at that Abercrombie and Fitch or whatever the hell it was, and you got your record.
Yeah.
And I remember I was talking to you or one of the guys in the band. It's like, you go, oh my God, it's like 10 years to the day we started Kara's Flowers.
Yeah.
And for you to get to that place and your band's going and you're playing these shows and you're on all the different Tonight Show, the shows and everything, and then your body falls apart and you work so hard.
Mm.
And then to walk away and go, I can't do this. That's a huge lesson that I don't know how many people can do that with any sense of grace. Honestly, I don't know anybody who can put all the eggs in a basket and that basket falls apart and then walk away and just be like, I guess that was a lesson. What's the next thing? I mean, what you went through, I don't know of any analog of anybody else I know of that got to that level
And
then
to turn it into what you have now turned it into, which is a career helping other people going through
all
that
of it.
same experience.
Yes, but to get to that place, and then you had to walk away from that, and all the challenges that happened after that, and then to, like a phoenix, come out of that and go, what did I learn from this now? And then become a therapist and have a podcast that addresses things that you basically are putting breadcrumbs for people who are following the path after you, and that's beautiful. Seriously,
It's the gift that you talk about, the gift that comes from the struggle. I, for a long time, regretted all the things that I lost, all the things that I never
Sure.
would get to do that I thought I would get to do, the tours, the playing with my heroes and
yes,
making more records that were hopefully going to be classic records. It's like I was seeing all that for a long time, and that's what was keeping me in my addiction. That was
Sure.
keeping me
sure,
depressed and anxious. And it's like the gifts that came from that, I now have gratitude
yes,
for the moments in life. Just something as simple as like that one day came full circle and we laid down an awesome track
yes,
that I can listen to for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And that will never go away.
Yeah.
It was something that
Yeah.
was, and it's like the fact that I didn't get to do it again after that
Yeah.
doesn't negate
right,
Mhm.
how grateful I am to have
Yeah.
had that experience in that
Yeah.
moment. And it also frees me up to create new ones
yeah,
and to be able to pay that forward and
Yeah.
I mean, it's like none of the things I'm doing today would I be doing
Right.
were it not for the struggle.
sure,
Everything I'm doing today, I mean, the book,
everything,
being a therapist,
yeah,
advocacy, starting this podcast. I
Yeah.
mean, all of this is an
Yeah.
outgrowth of the fact that I went through
Mm.
the pain that I did
Yeah.
in losing that.
yeah,
And so those are all gifts that
Yeah.
came from that
yeah,
struggle. And I appreciate how tenderly you're expressing your appreciation of that
Yeah.
too, because
Yeah.
it means a lot to me. I really feel like our lives intersected
Mhm.
at a moment that was pivotal for
Yeah.
both of us.
yeah,
And it's like nobody tells you that you're in the good old days when you're in the middle of it.
yeah, that's true.
And we just were like
Yeah.
kind of ships passing in the night
Yeah.
right at the right moment for
Yep.
me in my
Yep.
life. Like you were such a central figure in how that whole thing came to be. We
Right.
had the talent,
yeah,
we had songs,
yeah,
we had Adam burgeoning as
Yeah.
this front man with
Yeah.
the swagger
Yeah.
and all that.
yeah,
We had not a lot of anyone reining it in or figuring out how to keep that ship moving in the right direction
Yeah.
and steer and navigate through all the obstacles it
Yeah.
took to get to the next
Mhm.
place. And you were the person who came in right at the right moment to
Yeah.
do that. And we were the band that came into your life right
Yeah.
at the right
Yeah.
moment. And I don't know if it's serendipity or
Yeah.
if it's the universe or what,
Yeah.
but it's like, I will always be grateful for that. I mean, that's always going to be, it's not what I lost. It's something that I was given
right.
and that I will
Oh,
always
yeah,
cherish.
Yeah, interesting. It's really fascinating. I think the fact that you and I are here talking today is really something because I don't stay in contact with people sometimes. After some people I do after making a record, sometimes not. But you and I kind of touch base at like 2011, whatever it was, and then kind of circle back around. I think you and I started talking to each other about a year or so ago because I think you were going to have a book reading or something. I wanted to,
Yeah.
you had a book reading and
Mhm.
it was at Book Soup and I really wanted to go to it and something was happening where I couldn't go. And I was like, oh man, I really wanted to go to that. But somehow we kept in touch and kind of reconnected again. And here we are today. And it's a miracle. It's like we met in 2001. Like it was
Yeah.
like a month before September 9/11.
Oh
You know?
my God. Yeah.
Because I still have the calendar. I've got all this stuff where they have this calendar where, we started, I think it was like October 12th or to October something. We started making that record. I've got all the dates. I've got all the notes about everything. It's really something. We started after that thing happened,
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a testament, just big picture, that the whole "this too will pass"
Mhm.
thought, that the good times, like you say, you don't know you're in them until they're gone,
Mhm.
but also the worst moments of your life,
Mm.
23, 24 years on, you can look back to and say, here are the things I can
Yeah.
take from that. Here's
Mhm.
the lessons I learned. Here's the way that it still impacts my life today. And people don't want to hear that,
Yeah.
when you're in the worst moments, to
Mhm.
say, you're going to look back on this and be grateful for certain
Yeah.
parts of it, because you'll never believe that.
Yeah.
But it's true that, there's always something to be gleaned from those moments,
Yeah.
good or bad.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely correct. I think the challenge is for people who have, suicidality, having them stay in there another day before they kind of
Yeah.
don't, because we have thus far hung in there even on dark, dark days. but there are people who unfortunately don't make it. And
But it's hard to see coming out the other end with positivity.
It
It's
is.
especially when you're having one bad thing after another, and it's just they're piling on. And you're like, when does the good stuff happen? And if you feel like it doesn't, and you feel it's hopeless, you can understand the tendency to say, "There's no point." You know?
and I think what I know about pain, and I don't know pain like people who have really recurring horrible depression. I don't know that kind of pain, but I came to a place where actually it was my son who was talking to me about this, where someone had committed suicide, and I was like, that was wrong. They shouldn't do it. They should have hung out for the family. And somehow he said, why would you keep someone alive if they're just in pain? Why? Why not just let them go? And to me, that's always a fine line. Like, what do you do when someone's in pain? Do you
Sure.
throw them a life, like keep them going, come on, or do you finally go, listen, I understand. It's too much, And people who commit suicide, those who, like, someone jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and they did it twice, and the first time they did it, they realized, oh my God, I didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop. But then the pain came back, and then they did it. And so it's just, people don't want to die. They just want the pain to stop. And that's the only way they know, especially, and people get mad at people for taking drugs and drinking or whatever. But it's like, hey, if that works, I'm not going to be an asshole and say, don't do it.
Yeah.
I do it. Like when you see homeless people and people are like, you give them $1, they're going to buy booze or weed or drugs. Like, they should.
Yeah.
You're living on the streets. Yeah. That makes sense.
But it's one of the points of this podcast is to get the message out there that on a long enough timeline, you can find a way through.
Yes.
And we always want to encourage people to just keep fighting. And I know that's an easy platitude to say, but like you say, 25 years on to look back and say, I'm glad for Ryan to say that I'm happy, not happy, but I'm glad that I went through those things because look where I am now. Yeah. That's the message that.
Well, I agree. I mean, that's the way I feel personally. I guess I'm trying to open my mind to other people's lives. I just like, oh man, I just don't know, because I've never had crushing depression. And my mom's like 93 years old, and she's talked to me about driving her up to Oregon, where it's a right to die state, because at a certain point in time, she's like, I'm old and I'm done. So, and I think life is just really, really challenging.
Yeah.
So as long as you have friends and family, people you can lean into, and you can find a way through it, it can be very, very beautiful. You know. And that's like my discography is between the brutal and the beautiful. And I think that's what my life is too. It's like, grinding horrible times, and then also beautiful, graceful moments of just joy.
Not to tie it all the way back, but like epic, like the Faith No More song, the most beautiful. No, I'm completely serious. The heaviest groove of the "This Is It" part with the beautiful piano at the end. I mean, and even the video with the fish. I mean, it's the perfect blend of like the brutal and the beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, that piano part at the end was literally the first thing I ever learned to play on the piano, and literally still only one of the few things I know how to play on the piano. And whenever I sit at a piano, I play the ending part to Epic.
Interesting.
As therapists, we talk about how suicide is a permanent solution for a temporary problem.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, there is an exception to that. If you have Lou Gehrig's disease or something where your life is only going to get worse, I actually am in support of euthanasia in certain circumstances like that.
Yes.
As therapists, though, when you're talking about emotional issues, we talk about suicide as a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And addiction being sort of the opposite, which is it's a temporary solution to a problem that's not going to go away just because you're trying to escape it for a minute, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of flipped on its head. There's something that I just finished 3 years of my clinical work to finish my clinical hours for licensure at a place called the Missing Piece Center for Anxiety.
Oh, wow.
And my boss there, who owns and operates that place, Laura, there's something she says, because I dealt with suicidality on a daily basis. And we dealt with people who were major depression, panic disorder, just severe trauma.
Right.
It's one step away from hospitalization was the level of care. So I learned a lot, and it's heavy work. And it puts things in perspective, and you have to remind yourself, this is not all that life is. It's all this pain that, because you can lose your perspective when all you're seeing is the pain all the time.
Right.
But when we have a client who comes in there who's talking about suicidal thoughts, Laura's thing, and I found this really fascinating. She would say, what is it about you? What is it in your life that you're experiencing that you want to kill?
Oh, that's interesting.
If we could kill that part and save the rest, would life be better?
That's really cool.
That's amazing.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Because there may be parts that you would salvage, right?
Mhm.
Some people might say, I can't see anything. It's all bad. So, okay,
Sure.
well, let's try to find one thing that you
Right.
would save. If you could
Right.
kill all the bad stuff,
Right.
and then let's hold on to that little kernel
Right.
because we can work on
Right.
getting rid of those parts that you
Right.
want to kill.
Right.
But if you end it all,
Right.
we don't get that chance.
Yeah.
And that gives you a day
Yeah.
or a week or a month.
Right.
I've never thought of it in terms of that. Compartmentalizing for in a good way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Separating it into the things that are working and the things that aren't.
Well, it may be one thing and maybe 10 things, but it can become
But it
so
isn't
big
all
in your
things.
mind
Yeah.
that it
Right.
feels like it's everything.
Right.
And that's when people get to that desperate place. They can't see an end to it.
Right.
They can't see anything else but the pain.
Mm.
And the reality is there is more to life. I mean, life is pain.
Mm-hmm.
The
Right.
Buddhist said it,
Right.
life is
Right.
suffering. When you accept that, then
Right.
you're opened up to
Right.
discovering the joy.
Right.
That is the yin and the yang to the pain.
Right.
You can't have one without the other.
Right.
When you're in the middle of the pain, it's hard to see that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
When you're in the joy, all you can see is this isn't going to last forever.
Right.
But both are true,
Right.
right? There's a balance in that. Anyway, I thought I'd just share a little bit of that.
You do sound like you've come such a long way in terms of your own journey. Are there
Yeah.
things that to this day still trigger those anxiety responses in you and things like
no,
that?
not so much. No,
That's
no,
great.
I've just gotten. I mean, a lot of it is just for me personally. I have to do intense aerobic exercise to blow out stress. So
Yeah.
that's why the hikes I do are just
Mhm.
like just really rigorous, hard hikes because that elevated heart rate is the thing that kind of washes out stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
And for me, at the end of a really rough hike, I never feel better than that. I get there and I'm like, I feel amazing. I'm calm, centered, and then everything just kind of goes downhill as the day goes on. But that's really it. And it's similar to it's the same feeling of Shavasana at the end of yoga, which I haven't done in a while, where after hour and a half of yoga, you're laying there in this what's called corpse pose, and you're at this level of relaxation. You're like, what is this? Like you're feeling, what this is like. If you described it, I would have never even imagined. It's like, and I get to that same thing at the end of a hike. I'm just like, just super, super chill. And I did that even during Maroon 5. I'd do that stuff in the morning. I'd hike and hike just so I could show up and be my hopefully better version of myself. Maybe not perfect version, but I'd be like, okay, I've blown that out. I've survived it. I've been successful doing that. Now let me see if I can help make a record and be the best version of myself while helping this band or artist, because you have to be kind of centered and together before you can help other people if
Sure.
you can, I mean, I try to do that anyway.
That's awesome.
So where is your focus today? You're still working. You're still
Yeah.
doing a lot of great stuff. You've got a
Yeah.
relationship that sounds
Yeah.
like it's real healthy and you're
good.
working on it. What else is going on?
Well, first of all, I have to say, when you get a good relationship, it's incredible. It's something that I guess I never thought I would get to this place. I didn't think. I guess I couldn't even imagine it, much less get to it. To find a person who is actively trying to be healthy and owns her own stuff, and everything we do is to be what's good together. How do you kind of honor each other being individuals, but as a group, as a couple, you can really help each other be your better version of yourself. So I think just that, and I'm doing this Atmos mixing thing. That's the thing I do now.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm doing Atmos immersive audio mixing. I've been doing it for like 3 years. So I'm just doing tons and tons of that stuff. That's the main thing. I mean, the last thing
Music, movies, TV, all of it?
it's all music. It's
Just
all
music.
it's either catalog stuff or frontline, new releases. So I'm just doing that all the time. And I've got a studio in Van Nuys. I'm working there. Then I've got a studio in the desert because my gal and I live in Rancho Mirage, which is near Palm Springs, where I was this morning. I actually got up at 4, drove out, met my daughter, came out here.
Oh, nice.
And so I've got a studio out there, and I work out here. So I'm out here for mixing and for meetings, and I'm just, and it's a brand new. I mean, for me as a old guy in the business, I came from analog tape, then I made the jump to digital, which was a big pain in the butt, and then this jump to Atmos is mind-bendingly rugged because it's very, very new technology, and it's just super involved computational stuff. But anyway, it sounds incredible. The mixes sound incredible. It's beautiful because now music has got more dynamic range. It's more open. You can actually, I was introduced to it years ago, but I wasn't impressed with it as a technological approach. But I heard a Liz Phair song at my friend Brad Wood's place with my friend Will Kennedy, my mixer guy, and we sat there and we heard this song we'd never heard before. And we went outside after we were done meeting with our friend Brad, and we were in the street, and I was like, man, did you feel like, was that like more emotional? I was like, yeah. And to me, the emotional content is what got me into Atmos. All the technology just doesn't mean anything unless it does something in terms of bettering the emotional response to music. And that to me is what it's all about. Because that's all music is. Music we do because guys sometimes can't speak about things directly, so you have to sing about it. And we're just conveying emotions. Music is just a vehicle for emotions. If I could
pipeline to the heart.
That's all it is. So if I could just connect to your heart and your heart, I would do it. But that's why people dance, write poetry, sculpt, paint, make music, is because it's just to convey things to emotional, it's an emotional conduit. So that's what it's all about. Because all emotion. And here's the thing, for me, from my whole perspective, there's nothing to do on planet Earth. There's nothing except for learning and loving. That's it. Everything else doesn't mean anything. The material stuff, houses, cars, money, all this stuff means nothing. It's learning and loving. That's all we do here. That's it. There's nothing else.
Seems like he's got it figured out.
He does.
Well, I mean, but it's hard won. It's like, you've
definitely put in the hours to
it's
get
like the
there.
GS on the beachhead, at Iwo Jima or, in France and stuff like that. It's just like hard won learning and to understand what's really essential to life. What's essential is invisible to your eyes. It's not anything you can touch or look at. It's like human connection, like what you're doing this podcast. It's connection. Your experience in writing about your book. Having a family. It's just human connection and trying to do the best version of that you can. And try to leave the world a little better place than it was when you showed up. Ideally, if you can. But
Well, what better way to end the show than with the meaning of life from Matt Wallace? I mean,
the thing I learned is probably you too. I mean, whatever works for me seems to work for me, and I can't really hit other people over the head with it and go, you got to do it this way. It's like, look, this is what worked for me.
Well, everyone has to figure it out for themselves.
They do.
And that's what you are illuminating is the path that worked for you.
Yeah.
And it also just shows people out there that there is a path out there.
Yeah.
They may take some time to find it and you may bump into some walls on the way, but there's a path through.
Yeah. Yeah.
The learning is the thing.
Yeah.
It's it, man. And your book had so many amazing moments. And I think something you wrote at the end of it was how proud you were and that your accomplishment of coming to this place, being sober and being a therapist actually is bigger and larger than even this huge success with Maroon 5.
Yeah.
Because on a personal level, it's huge what you've done. I mean, huge to come through the fire and who you've become. It's really something, when you think about it.
Writing the book, it's a perfect example of what you were describing, because that book doesn't come into existence if it's not for all the stuff that I had to go through to get to it. I had to both earn it. I had to learn that stuff.
Right.
It's wisdom gained through experience of painful shit. You could say that about music. You could say that about the lyrics with Adam on Songs About Jane.
Right.
But to a certain extent, there was just, there was also just precocious talent. There was also just the right thing at the right time.
Right.
I mean, you don't write a book about your life without living that life first. So to me, that's why it's like, it's even more meaningful on a personal level to and even if it had never been published or anything, just as a project.
Right.
Was so fulfilling for me.
Right.
But I get to look back and see the project that we took on and just see that it's like, not only was that special for me, but it's like most people never experience something like that.
Right.
It's a really special thing to have been a part of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could live your whole life as a producer and make a lot of great records and still never have a moment that's just special like that.
Yeah.
And as a musician, I mean, it's like you could be the greatest musician in the world, but you may never find that collaboration that takes you to that next level. And so it is about the relationships. It's about the people that come into your life and what you learn from them in that moment. And you take that with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a moment in time, but if you look at it in the right way, it's something you gain for the rest of your life.
And it isn't just about success, because, the albums that we made together, they don't have any commercial success, but I still look at them the same way you do, and that I can listen to that for the rest of my life and say, hey, that's my bass. I'm playing. That's me singing harmony. You know what I mean? Like, that's a snapshot of a moment in time. That's a great memory and a great experience that I share with my friend. You know what I mean? So it's about the experience.
And it led to this experience. If it hadn't been for that, we wouldn't be doing this 10, 15 years later. So
yeah. And I think you're saying that you earn it. I was thinking that you earn it and learn it, but it's also like for a lot of people, you earn it, you lose it, and then you learn it as you kind of go, what the hell? I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, the whole thing I think is really something. Just
It's a ride.
humans and yeah. Are you in touch with any other therapists that are doing a similar kind of thing to this?
A show like this?
No, well, a show. I mean, I guess maybe with your maybe a show like this, but maybe just like your private practice. I mean, because I know you're focused on primarily on musicians. Is that, yeah.
Well, no, I'm still kind of figuring out exactly if I'm going to hone in that specifically to musicians. I do work with a few people in my private practice that are musicians and or producers and record label people.
Right.
And that has been so fascinating and interesting for me because I honestly didn't get into this field thinking I would go back into the music industry.
Right.
But they keep pulling me back. No, it was more like I wrote the book with in mind, you know, this is just going to be for me. And then I'm becoming a therapist. And then I was like, oh, I didn't even think about the fact like that's going to be my platform. Right. But then of course it is, right? Because I have this background that 99.9% therapists don't have. Right. So I actually, one of the groups that reached out to me was this group called the Music Industry Therapist Collective, which is, this is a group I should introduce you to because these are all people that worked in the music industry, not necessarily performers. There are a few of them are, but most of them were A&R or they were management or agents or whatever. And then they had a life change and they went back to school to become a therapist. And now they work with people in the music industry because they know the stresses of that world. My position is unique because I was a performer, not just working in the industry. And so it crosses that line. It's like, for me, I don't know if I want to go and work with performers in general or people that are just high performing individuals or narrow into musicians in particular. But I think there's a shift, a monumental shift in how we're treating people that are sensitive people by nature, working in a sensitive industry in terms of the kind of hours that are required and the stress level and how there's just no real security and ever. It's like you could be riding high and you might always be thinking, is this it?
Yeah.
Is it over tomorrow?
Right.
So it is, I think it's great that there are people that are actually prioritizing wellness and care in that community.
Yeah, they should, because there's a number of artists who've unfortunately not survived because the machine wants them to keep going and touring and keep making records when you know they're fragile and they're not going to make it. Like someone like Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, there's a bunch of people that all this pressure is on them to continue to perform when they really just need to take a break and kind of collect themselves. And that's the thing that I think that's kind of challenging. When you have an industry that makes a lot of money from someone who's not doing well, I mean, while this person's not doing well. So
there's a long history of that. And you even see still pushback, I think, from artists even saying like, well, what's an artist if they're not suffering?
Right.
And my argument is, well, suffering can create an artist, but to sustain a career as an artist, you need to figure out how to work through that pain. It doesn't mean you can't still use it for your art. How do you feel about that? Do you think that you have to be in pain to create good art?
Oh man, that's a tough question.
Yeah, I know. We start a whole new podcast.
I think the unfortunate answer is yes, you have to be in pain to create great art. I think because look at all the songs about Jane. They weren't written because he was a happy camper.
No.
Van Gogh, anyone who's creating art, I think my feeling about art is it's like grain of sand that's in the oyster that irritation creates the pearl.
Yeah.
And so that irritation has to be there. So you have this beautiful pearl, like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I can't believe you're singing this song. And I know exactly what you're talking about. It's because people do go through the fire, and the best artists basically go look over the edge, come back, and they kind of describe it to us. And we're like, oh yeah, I think I've seen something like that. And that's really what it's about. And I wish it were easier. But I think most
if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Everybody would do it. But also I think great art has to be built on genuine emotional content of something happening. A great art. Now, that's not to say there's some outstanding pop songs and all that stuff is wonderful, but stuff that really gets into your guts, that makes you feel. I think they have to go through this stuff because it won't resonate with you if it's not real. Yeah. It has to come from this place. You go, oh my God, that person's been there, and that's what makes it so wonderful that those of us who can hear an artist sing something to us and we go, oh my God, I'm not alone. I had that feeling too. I was in that same place. Thank goodness they sang that song, Yeah. And I did this thing for Gibson TV on Faith No More's Angelus thing. And I had basically talked about that thing, that I think that songs at their base value is just great entertainment. It's really, really fun. But I do believe that the right song at the right time can keep someone living another day. And I think that's because I've heard so many stories where people go, yeah, that's why I kept going, And I think that happens. I
Yeah.
think that's really, really true.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's one of the other blessings that's come from songs about Jane, because for the longest time, I knew that it had an impact, but I was kind of removed from the world. And now that I'm kind of back in the world and have things that I'm promoting, I get people reaching out to me saying, like, that album saved my
Right.
life.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it came along like at a moment in my life when I was awkward, and then I was a teenager and I didn't feel
Mhm.
connected, and it gave me hope, and it
Right.
made me feel like my feelings were something that everyone experiences,
Yeah.
and I wanted a relationship so bad, but I was in
Yeah.
so much pain, all this stuff that people share
Yeah.
with me. And it's absolutely that. The music can
Yeah.
save your life. It can be therapy. To have been a part of something like that in that regard,
Yeah.
and connecting everything together in that way is so special.
Yeah.
And that's a great place to end. I
Yeah.
think.
Thank you both. Thank you both for creating that and being a part of it together.
Thank you for me being a part of it. I really appreciate you asking me to participate. This is really cool. I love the opportunity to kind of learn more.
Yeah.
For me, it's always like more. What else can I
Well,
understand?
it's been interesting to learn from you, your
Oh, thanks.
perspective on just a lot of things. That obviously, in my younger years, I probably could have been more inquisitive and learned more from you back then. But I'm glad that I'm catching up now. So thank you so
Yeah,
much
you're
for this
welcome. Yeah.
this moment and this wonderful conversation.
Thank you, and thank you for you and the guys hiring me for that record. That was a game changer.
Yeah.
All right.
right.
Well,
Well, good.
this has been another just amazing conversation here on the Harder to Breathe podcast. Join us every Tuesday for new episodes on all major audio platforms and video on YouTube. We'll see you next time, Tuesday, right here on the Harder to Breathe podcast.
See you.
Woo.